Sophia Carter had never been particularly close to her best friend's older brother, Ethan Hayes. She knew him only from occasional family gatherings and the polite smiles exchanged when their paths crossed. But tonight, as she stepped into Lila's cozy apartment, something felt different. Maybe it was the soft glow of the living room lamps, or the faint scent of vanilla and cinnamon that always seemed to linger in Lila's home. But Sophia felt an unfamiliar flutter in her chest. "Hey, you made it." Lila greeted her with a warm hug, oblivious to the subtle shift in Sophia's mood. Her sisterly charm was always comforting, a constant reminder that she had a safe space here. Sophia smiled, adjusting the strap of her bag and returning the hug. "Wouldn't miss it," she replied, her voice lighter than she felt. Ethan was already there, perched on the edge of the couch with a book in his hands. He looked up, and for a brief moment their eyes met. Sophia felt the kind of jolt that made her stomach twist, an inexplicable mix of recognition and curiosity. Ethan gave her a quick nod and a small, almost imperceptible smile before returning to his reading. She chastised herself silently. It's just a being polite, nothing more. Dinner was casual, a blend of laughter, teasing, and chatter that made Sophia temporarily forget the tension in her chest. Ethan joined the conversation occasionally, his voice calm, measured, and strangely engaging. There was a magnetic quality to the way he listened, the way he tilted his head when she spoke, as if he genuinely cared about every word. Sophia noticed the ease with which he drew her into the discussion, and though she tried to focus on Lila's stories about work, her mind kept wandering back to Ethan. After dessert, Lila excused herself to take a phone call, leaving Sophia and Ethan alone in the living room. The sudden quiet felt different, charged with something unspoken. Sophia shifted slightly on the couch, her fingers brushing the edge of the cushion. Ethan's gaze lingered a moment longer than necessary, and she felt heat rise to her cheeks. "You always seem thoughtful," Ethan said casually, though there was an edge of something behind his words. It wasn't teasing, and it wasn't judgment. Sophia didn't know how to respond. I guess I am," she murmured, trying to keep her tone neutral. She felt vulnerable under his gaze, aware of every small movement, every flutter of her expression, that he smiled faintly, and the tension became almost tangible. "I like that," he added softly, and Sophia felt her breath catch. She quickly looked away, focusing on the carpet, willing herself not to overthink it. Then, as if testing boundaries, Ethan handed her a folded piece of paper. "I thought you might find this interesting," he said lightly, almost as an afterthought. The paper was small and unassuming, but Sophia could feel the weight of it in her hand, heavier than it should have been. She unfolded it cautiously. Inside was a simple note. "You see things others miss. I like that about you." Her heart skipped. The words were innocent enough, almost flattering, but there was an undeniable undertone, a subtle invitation that stirred something forbidden in her. She glanced at Ethan, who was casually flipping through his book, pretending nothing had happened. Her pulse quickened. Sophia tried to shove the thought aside. He's just being polite, or maybe friendly, nothing more. Yet, the note lingered in her mind, and she felt an odd mix of guilt and intrigue. What did he mean by that? Why did it make her feel special? The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Lila returned, animated and oblivious, recounting her day in excruciating detail. Sophia laughed when appropriate, nodded when needed, but a part of her remained elsewhere. On the note, on the subtle intensity in Ethan's eyes, and the way he seemed to understand her in ways she didn't even understand herself. When it was time to leave, Sophia felt a strange reluctance to step out of the apartment. She hugged Lila tightly, whispering a quick goodbye, then turned toward Ethan, who gave her a polite nod. Their eyes met again, and for a fleeting moment, the unspoken words between them felt heavier than air. Outside, the chill of the night hit her face. Sophia pulled her coat tighter, trying to shake the lingering awareness of Ethan's gaze. She walked briskly, repeating to herself that it was nothing, that she was imagining things. Yet, she couldn't help but reach for her bag to look at the note one more time, her fingers tracing the edges almost reverently. As she walked home, every step felt heavier, burdened with thoughts she didn't want to have yet couldn't dismiss. The city streets were quiet, the occasional car passing by the only sound breaking her reverie. Sophia's mind replayed the evening in fragments, the laughter, the conversation, the note. And beneath it all, a growing, uncomfortable awareness. She was curious. She was drawn to Ethan in a way that felt both thrilling and wrong. That be why the time she reached her apartment, Sophia's hands were trembling slightly. She placed the note on her desk, staring at it as if it held answers she wasn't ready to understand. Guilt mingled with excitement, forming a cocktail of emotions that left her both anxious and alive. Sophia lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Ethan. Every interaction, every subtle glance replayed in her mind. She wondered if she should respond, if she should ignore it, or if she should pretend the note never existed. Deep down, she knew one thing with certainty. Something had shifted. Something had begun that she couldn't yet define. And for the first time in a long time, Sophia didn't want it to end. The morning after the note, Sophia couldn't concentrate on anything. Her textbook lay open on her desk, but the words blurred into meaningless shapes. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ethan's faint smile, the way he had lingered in the doorway before Lila returned, the subtle warmth in his tone when he spoke. She chastised herself quietly. It's just a compliment. That's all. But as the day went on, the memory of the note refused to fade. Curiosity gnawed at her, stronger than any sense of loyalty she felt toward Lila. By mid-afternoon, she found herself picking up her phone, hesitant yet compelled, typing out a message she almost didn't dare to send. Hey, thanks for the note. Her thumb hovered over send for a moment, a mix of excitement and fear twisting her chest. Then she pressed it. Almost immediately, a reply buzzed on her screen. I wasn't sure you'd notice. Simple words, yet they carried a weight Sophia couldn't ignore. Her fingers trembled slightly as she typed back. I did. It made me think. The conversation began cautiously, carefully towing the line between casual and personal. Ethan asked about her classes, her plans for the weekend, seemingly innocent topics. Yet beneath each message there was an undercurrent of attention that made Sophia's heart race. She realized that with every exchange, she revealed more of herself than she intended a BY evening. The exchange had taken on a rhythm of its own. Texts came in sporadically, but always timed to feel natural. Ethan seemed to know when to appear, when to withdraw, when to leave the space for her to want more. He asked about her favorite music, the kind of books she liked, and even little details she had never shared with Lila. Each response felt like a thread pulling her deeper into a connection she had never imagined with him. Sophia sat on her bed, phone in hand, staring at the screen. Her mind raced with conflicting emotions. Guilt flared immediately. Lila was her best friend. She had shared countless secrets with her over the years. How could she be entertaining this emotional closeness with Lila's brother? And yet, there was something intoxicating about Ethan's attention. Every word he sent seemed to understand her, to see past the careful mask she presented to the world that's just conversation. It's harmless, she told herself, but the truth was far more complicated. Her thoughts wandered, imagining what it would be like to be with him. Not physically, not explicitly, but the idea of someone seeing her so completely, of being the object of his undivided attention, was addictive. She had never felt that way before. The next few days blurred together in a strange mix of excitement and anxiety. Sophia found herself looking forward to messages from Ethan, even when she pretended to be busy or distracted. She noticed herself smiling at her phone more than she smiled in real life, feeling a rush of warmth at a single line of text. Ethan had a way of phrasing things, of using language that made her feel both flattered and slightly uneasy. One afternoon, he suggested meeting at a small cafe across town, insisting it was just for a quick chat about something we both like. Sophia hesitated. Lila had no idea about this, and part of her knew it might be crossing a line. But another part, the part that had already begun to crave Ethan's attention, felt a thrill at the idea. When she agreed, she felt a pang of guilt immediately after. She imagined telling Lila and seeing the hurt in her eyes. The thought was unbearable, yet she couldn't shake the pull toward Ethan, toward the possibility of exploring the strange, electric connection that had begun between them at the cafe. Ethan was already seated when she arrived, casually sipping coffee as though it were any other day. But to Sophia, the sight of him there, so calm, so composed, was a jolt. She sat across from him, hands clasped around her cup, trying to steady her racing heart. "Hey," he said softly, looking up from his notebook. His voice was low, casual, yet carried the same subtle charge she had felt in the apartment days ago. "Hi," Sophia replied, attempting normalcy. She forced a smile, but it felt stiff. She could feel the intensity of his gaze, the way it lingered just long enough to unsettle her. Their conversation started innocuously, with music, books, and recent college experiences. But gradually, it slipped into more personal territory. Sophia found herself sharing thoughts she hadn't dared express to anyone, not even Lila. Ethan listened intently, nodding, occasionally offering insights that made her feel truly understood. Each moment of connection was intoxicating. Yet Sophia felt the tug of guilt, reminding her that she was treading dangerous ground. She noticed the subtle ways Ethan mirrored her expressions, the tiny gestures that suggested he was paying more attention than a casual acquaintance should. When she laughed, he smiled with a depth that made her pulse quicken. When she spoke of frustrations or worries, he offered gentle encouragement, the kind of support that made her feel both protected and exposed at the same time. By the time she left the cafe, Sophia's emotions were a tangled mess. She was exhilarated and guilty in equal measure. Walking home, she replayed every word, every glance, every tiny nuance of his behavior. Her mind was a storm of temptation and conscience, excitement and apprehension. That night, lying in bed, Sophia stared at the ceiling, feeling the pull of Ethan's presence even though he was miles away. She knew she had crossed the invisible line, that she had opened the door to something complicated and potentially dangerous. And yet, the thought of closing it made her chest ache. The emotional connection had already taken root, and she couldn't deny the way it made her feel alive. Sophia turned over in bed, fingers brushing the edge of her phone. Another message from Ethan had appeared, brief but teasing. "Did you enjoy our little adventure?" She smiled despite herself, heart pounding. She knew responding would keep the line open, would continue the emotional dance they had begun. And deep down, she knew she couldn't resist. Her fingers hovered over the screen, torn between conscience and curiosity, desire and guilt. The night stretched ahead, silent and waiting, and Sophia understood one unshakable truth. Her life had shifted, subtly but irrevocably, in the presence of a signal she could neither ignore nor fully comprehend. Sophia couldn't shake the memory of the cafe meeting. Every detail, the warmth of the coffee in her hands, the way Ethan's eyes had held hers when she laughed, the ease with which he had listened to her fears, played over and over in her mind. She knew she was walking a fine line. Lila trusted her implicitly, and yet here she was thinking about Ethan in ways she would never admit aloud. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was something deeper, something that made her heart race even when she told herself to stop. Each message from Ethan felt like a small spark, igniting thoughts she couldn't control. "It's emotional," she rationalized. "It's harmless. Nothing physical has happened." But her mind betrayed her, replaying every smile, every subtle touch, every lingering glance from that day at the cafe. When Ethan suggested they meet again, this time for a longer conversation in a quieter part of town, Sophia hesitated. She had so many reasons to say no: loyalty, guilt, the unspoken rules of friendship, but something in her twisted with anticipation. She told herself it was a mistake, but she knew she would go anyway. The pull was too strong at the small park near the edge of the city. Ethan was already waiting on a bench beneath a large oak tree. His posture was relaxed, casual, yet the way he observed her as she approached made her chest tighten. He stood as she neared, smiling lightly. "You made it," he said, voice low and warm. The simplicity of the greeting sent an electric charge through her. "Of course," Sophia replied, her words steadier than she felt. She sat beside him, the space between them charged with unspoken tension. Neither spoke for a moment, both aware of the weight of the silence. Then Ethan leaned back slightly and asked about her life, about her thoughts on future plans and dreams. At first, the questions were ordinary, polite, but slowly they became intimate, probing in ways that made Sophia feel simultaneously exposed and seen. She found herself revealing things she had never told anyone. Fears about failing in college, worries about feeling invisible, doubts about herself. Each admission seemed to draw Ethan closer, not physically, but emotionally. He listened without judgment, responding with empathy and subtle encouragement. Sophia felt a strange relief, a comfort she hadn't realized she craved, yet every word brought a sharp twinge of guilt. "I feel like you understand me in ways others don't," she said quietly. Almost ashamed of the admission, Ethan's gaze softened. "Maybe it's because you let yourself be real with me," he replied gently. "Most people don't." His words were simple, but they carried a weight that made Sophia's chest ache. She tried to smile, to appear casual, but her mind was already spinning. The conversation meandered through laughter and confessions, each topic threading them closer together. Sophia noticed the subtle ways Ethan mirrored her expressions, the tilt of his head, the way he laughed a moment after she did, the almost imperceptible leaning forward when she spoke. Every small gesture felt charged, like a language she had never learned but instinctively understood. Yet, as the emotional intimacy deepened, guilt gnawed at her relentlessly. She thought of Lila laughing in her apartment just days ago, unsuspecting, trusting. Was this betrayal? She couldn't tell herself it wasn't. The emotional closeness she felt with Ethan was already crossing boundaries she didn't want to acknowledge. That be why mid-afternoon, Sophia suggested they take a walk. The park was quiet, autumn leaves rustling beneath their feet. As they strolled, the conversation shifted to more personal territory. Hopes, past mistakes, dreams. Sophia shared her love for writing and the stories she'd never shown anyone. Ethan listened intently, praising her ideas, asking questions that made her feel seen in a way she had rarely felt before. "You have a way of looking at things," Ethan said softly, "like you notice details everyone else misses." "It's rare." Sophia's chest tightened. The words were innocent, but they felt like more recognition, an acknowledgement that made her heart race. She looked at him, suddenly aware of how close they had walked without noticing. She knew a single step further could be dangerous in ways she wasn't ready to confront. When it was time to leave, Sophia felt a pang of reluctance. Every instinct in her body told her to prolong this connection, to stay a little longer, to savor the attention that made her feel alive and understood. But guilt pushed back, sharp and insistent. She couldn't ignore it. She turned to Ethan, heart pounding, and said, "I should get going. Lila would wonder where I am." Ethan nodded, understanding but not judging. "Of course. I'll see you soon." Sophia hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, soon." She forced a smile, masking the storm of emotions inside her. Walking away, she felt a mix of exhilaration and dread. Every step echoed with thoughts of him, of the intensity they shared, of the dangerous path she was navigating without realizing how far she had already gone. That night, Sophia sat by her window, staring at the city lights. Her phone buzzed with another message from Ethan. "I keep thinking about our conversation. You're different." In a good way. She couldn't help the shiver that ran down her spine. It was thrilling, intoxicating, but it also reminded her how fragile her loyalty was. She tried to focus on other things, schoolwork, chores, mundane tasks, but every glance at her phone, every ping, made her heart leap. She replayed every interaction, every subtle glance, every carefully worded message. It was a dangerous fascination, one she knew she should resist, but resisting felt impossible. Sophia realized, with a mix of fear and exhilaration, that she had crossed an invisible line. It wasn't physical yet, but emotionally, she was entangled with Ethan in ways that made it impossible to think clearly. Every thought of him was tinged with desire and guilt, curiosity and caution, excitement and dread. As sleep finally claimed her, Sophia's mind continued to spin with possibilities. The emotional connection she shared with Ethan had grown beyond her control. She knew that the next meeting, the next message, the next smile could push her even further into territory she wasn't prepared for. And yet, despite every warning, a part of her didn't want it to stop. She was caught in a pull stronger than herself, a tension that promised both danger and exhilaration, and she had no idea how to escape it. Sophia woke the next morning with a heavy weight pressing on her chest. The excitement of yesterday's meeting with Ethan still lingered, but it had been replaced by a gnawing guilt she couldn't shake. Every text, every glance, every shared moment replayed in her mind, and she realized that the thrill she had felt came at the expense of her friendship with Lila. She tried to tell herself it wasn't serious. It's just emotional, it's not physical. But she knew deep down that she had crossed a line. Every laugh, every subtle look, every intimate conversation with Ethan had woven a thread between them that could not easily be undone. Sophia had begun to depend on his attention in a way that was both intoxicating and dangerous. Her phone buzzed with a new message. "I keep thinking about you," it read. Sophia's fingers trembled as she held the device, torn between responding and ignoring it. A part of her wanted to continue the connection, to indulge in the warmth and validation Ethan provided. Another part, the part that still held loyalty to Lila, felt a sharp stab of guilt. Sophia took a deep breath and decided she needed to reflect. She spent the morning alone, wandering her apartment, replaying every interaction in her mind. She remembered Lila's trust, the countless times they had shared secrets and dreams, and realized that what she was doing with Ethan was a betrayal, however subtle it might seem. She felt a pang of shame, but also a strange relief. Acknowledging the truth was the first step toward regaining control. That afternoon, Sophia called Lila, her voice tight with nerves. "Hey, can we talk later?" she asked. Lila's cheerful tone was laced with concern. "Of course. Is everything okay?" Sophia forced a laugh. "Yeah, just need to catch up." They agreed to meet at Lila's apartment that evening. When Sophia arrived, she was greeted with Lila's warm smile, completely unaware of the turmoil brewing inside her friend. Sitting across from Lila, Sophia felt the familiar comfort of their connection, but also a sharp contrast to the tension she had been carrying with her thoughts of Ethan. She realized how much she valued this friendship and how fragile it had become under the weight of her secret. As they chatted, Sophia struggled to keep her mind from drifting. Every subtle memory of Ethan, his smile, his words, the way he had listened so intently, fought for space in her consciousness. She realized that her emotional entanglement had not only jeopardized her friendship, but had also clouded her own sense of judgment. Later, when Lila went to make tea, Sophia pulled out her phone. Ethan's message blinked at her again. For a moment, she hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard. But then, with a deep exhale, she typed, "I think we need to take a step back. I can't continue like this. It's unfair to both of us and to Lila." She pressed send, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. The response came quickly. "I understand. I respect that. No pressure, no complaints, just acknowledgement." Sophia felt a strange heaviness lift from her shoulders, replaced by clarity. She had drawn a boundary, reclaiming her integrity and reaffirming her loyalty. It wasn't easy, and it hadn't been without temptation, but it felt like the right choice. After putting her phone away, Sophia turned her attention back to Lila. The warmth of their conversation slowly filled the empty spaces left by her internal conflict. She laughed freely at Lila's jokes, shared stories about her week, and felt the simple joy of being present with a friend who mattered more than any fleeting thrill. As the evening progressed, Sophia reflected quietly on everything that had happened. The subtle signal from Ethan, the emotional closeness, the thrill and guilt, It had all taught her something important. She realized that boundaries were necessary, even in the presence of temptation, and that emotional intimacy with someone outside of a committed relationship or friendship could be just as powerful as physical connections. Sophia also understood that her experience had revealed parts of herself she hadn't fully recognized before. Her capacity for empathy, her craving for understanding, her vulnerability. These were qualities she valued, but she now knew they could be manipulated if not handled carefully. She promised herself that she would nurture these traits in healthy ways, with people who respected her boundaries. That night, Sophia walked home under the soft glow of streetlights, feeling a calm she hadn't felt in days. She thought about Ethan one last time, allowing herself a final acknowledgement of the connection, but without longing or regret. It was simply a chapter, a lesson, a mirror reflecting her own strengths and weaknesses. When she reached her apartment, Sophia placed her phone on the nightstand and sat quietly for a moment, letting the day's reflections settle. She felt a sense of completion, not because the experience had been easy, but because she had faced it honestly. She had confronted temptation, navigated emotional complexity, and made a choice that honored both herself and her friendship with Lila. As she lay down to sleep, her mind was at peace. The tension that had gripped her for days had loosened, replaced by a quiet understanding. She knew there might be moments in the future when her heart would feel similar pulls, when curiosity and desire would test her resolve, but she also knew she was stronger now. She had learned to recognize the boundaries that mattered, to respect them, and to honor the people she cared about most. And in that calm, Sophia smiled to herself, knowing that while life would continue to challenge her, she had faced one of its most complicated temptations with honesty and courage. The night passed gently, the city outside quiet and serene, as she drifted into sleep with a renewed sense of self, her heart lighter, her conscience clear, and her bonds of friendship stronger than ever.